Hello, and welcome to season 2 of The Cougar, the Bitch, and the Wardrobe. I'm your host, Lana Mazer, also known as Curated by the Cougar. I am so excited to be back after the holidays, and I hope everyone had a lovely, warm, happy holiday season with their loved ones and a safe and joyful new year. And now we are back and better than before. And I'm just so excited that we are kicking off 2026. And I'm really excited to be here with you today. If you are new to the podcast, thank you so much for opening up your ears and your eyes to my podcast and my guests that I have here. And if you are already a listener and a follower, thank you. It means the world to me to have your support. So let's get started with episode 1, season 2. So today we are going to be talking about building strong relationships, the power of alignment. Now, I do want to preface our conversation today by saying that by no means do I consider myself to be a relationship and love expert. I have had my fair share of experiences in life, love, relationships, divorce, dating, situationships, and all of the above. So I am just here to shed some light on my experiences. And if anything that I offer here today resonates with you, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. And I'm always open to comments and messages because it really does also help me to understand my audience. I also want to start off by saying as well that I am not here to say that I poo poo on marriage, that I'm anti marriage, that you shouldn't get married. None of those things. I am just really speaking from a place of my own experience and wanting to be helpful if maybe you're going through something similar. So let's get into it. And I have my notes here as per usual, just so I keep myself on target here. But so introducing the primary theme here of relationships built on alignment versus need. And I think that this is very, very key. So, for those of you who are within my age range, you will remember the movie Jerry Maguire. And if you are younger than me, you may have seen the movie, but if not, go watch it. It's a good one. And there's this very famous scene from the movie. I'm not giving anything away if you haven't seen it, but you should see it. Um, where the famous line is, "You complete me." And I remember that when that movie came out, I think I might have been a sophomore in college. I'm really dating myself here, but it is what it is. And I've talked about this line in a previous episode that it always bothered me. And maybe when I was younger, it bothered me less because in some ways, it's like I wanted to romanticize that idea. And especially that's what they're trying to do in the movie, where you are not a complete person until you find your missing piece, that person that truly completes you. And I'm here to tell you today that you need to be a complete person on your own. And that finding that person that you want to be with is really someone who's going to bring you joy and happiness, or be your ride or die, or that person that brings something to your life, to your life experience. Someone who can be there for the laughs, for the tears, for everything. But you need to be a complete person on your own. And I really, really want to emphasize that. If there's anything that I have learned throughout my years of dating, marriage, divorce, and everything in between, is that you have to be complete as a human being and that you want to build a relationship on alignment versus need. So, what does that mean? I think that that concept has meant a lot of different things over years, centuries, etc. And I don't want to get into all of that, but there was a time for women when relationships really were built on need. And it wasn't that long ago, it was really only a few years before I was born. A woman could not open up a bank account on her own. She needed a man to do it or a man to co sign on it, but she could not walk into a bank and open up a bank account. And so in that period of history and before, relationships were built on need. There was a time when women weren't educated the same way men were or weren't given the same opportunities. And same thing in careers, the opportunities weren't there. And so a lot of building a life and choosing a partner was built on need versus alignment. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't get married unless you had a dowry and your family was able to offer 3 sacks of gold coins, a cow, 10 chickens, and 4 goats. And so families really got married in order to better their economic situations, to put food on the table. Empires were built based off of marriage because, look, Marie Antoinette was the Austrian princess who married the King of France. And so those were times of need. But today, things have changed and things have shifted because gone are the days where you really don't need to get married to have a baby. We all know that. So if you want to have a baby and you can make that happen for yourself without a husband. So what does it mean then to create a relationship based on alignment versus need? So I think for me, one thing is shared values. And that's a very vague statement, but I think it can mean a lot of different things. Shared values, meaning how do you view spirituality? How does that play a role in your life? How do you view spending money, saving money? How do you view your relationships with your extended family, with friends? That to me is shared values, shared goals. That to me doesn't mean that you have to want exactly the same things out of life, but maybe if you're in a relationship with someone who, your goal is, in 5 to 10 years, you want to retire and move to Europe, but your partner is like, well, that's not really for me. Like, I'm going to work until the day I die. Or maybe that person said, you know what, like, my goal in life is not to move to Europe, but I'd be really happy being a snowbird and living in Florida 6 months out of the year. That is not a shared goal. Another shared goal is, how do you view saving for retirement? Are you someone who is, your goal is to save? Or are you that person who's like, you know what, like, screw that. I'm here to enjoy my money and spend it. And I don't really care what's going on for me when I'm 85 years old. So these are the ideas of shared goals. The other thing that I think is really important is emotional maturity. And though that term also gets thrown around a lot, emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, but I really do think that that is so important, because you have to be on par, on the same level with that person. Because if you are not, if you are the one who's more emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware, you are going to spend the rest of your time in that relationship trying to educate the other person on how to be on the same level with you. And then you're just going to be in survival mode. And no one wants that. It's exhausting. You will be frustrated. Your cortisol levels will always be spiked, and it is disastrous. So I think that that really is the what alignment means to me in the context of relationships. Now, we of course also want to feel sexually attracted to our partners. We want to feel safe with our partners, emotionally held by our partners, all of those things. So, it is trying to understand, and especially in a situation where, if you are recently divorced and you're new to the dating world, is really understanding for yourself maybe what's really important to you and prioritizing those things. I also believe that in healthy relationships, or the idea of healthy relationships, stem from two fulfilled individuals. Now, everybody finds fulfillment and satisfaction in different ways. But again, going back to that concept of being a whole and complete person, you want to feel fulfilled on your own rather than only feeling fulfilled when you're in a relationship. So, what do I mean by that? I have realized for myself, and as I've mentioned many times in previous episodes, that I've really spent most of my adult life in relationships, in monogamous relationships, whether it was with a long-term boyfriend and or married. And I was married twice. And a lot of what I was seeking, maybe when I was younger, was to feel loved and supported in a familial situation, because I didn't feel that from my mother. And I was very eager to be out on my own, to create a family of my own, and to find that love, that connection, that support with a husband. And then I think, in addition to that, as I matured and I was approaching, I got married for the first time when I was 28, and then I got married for the second time when I was 35. But again, I was looking for that fulfillment as a woman, that I wanted to have a family and to have babies and things like that. And so it probably forced me into this mode of dating where I was looking for a husband. And what I realize about myself today is that I have been able to move into this chapter of my life where I feel fulfilled on my own outside of a relationship, because I have developed all different parts of my life. And so I feel fulfilled as a person in my career, with my family, with my friends, with my personal interests, passions. I'm so proud to say that I'm on the board of trustees for two museums, and that really fulfills a part of me. I'm very much into fitness, and that has always been a part of my life, but really has developed into something much more over the last 2 years, and feel so proud of myself that I'm approaching 49 and I'm in the best shape of my life, and that I travel the world on my own with friends and have really gotten to meet so many interesting, incredible people. That in my free time, that I love to read, I love to go to the theater, I love to listen to music, I go to museums, I go to galleries. And so I have cultivated all these aspects of my life. Now, I'm not here to say that I'm perfect by any means, but I'm giving it as an example of what I have found really works for me in terms of feeling like a whole, fulfilled person. So, for me to enter into a relationship with someone, it's not necessarily that I need to find someone who loves to do the same things that I love and does the same things and whatever. But it's more that, like, how are they going to enhance my life that's already very complete? And I have thought so much about that. And I really feel that at this point, for me to be in a relationship with someone, it's really because, yes, I mean, I want to be attracted to that person. And I also want to have a deep friendship with that person. I want to feel that we really connect on a level where we can really talk about things and we really understand each other. And we have this ongoing curiosity for what the other person thinks about, what lights them up, what makes them sad or mad or angry, and really valuing each other and in what the other person feels and thinks about and says. And, and also being able to laugh with someone, because I think that's such a beautiful thing, and that's something that never gets old, and wanting to have adventures with that person. So that for me is something that I feel would really enhance my life in a relationship with someone. I have seen with friends of mine, and also for me at times in my past and in my youth, where I felt very much reliant on that person that I was in a relationship with to bring those things into my life that would make me feel fulfilled. And I have learned over time that the only person that can do that successfully is me, is you for yourself. And that we fall into this pit of despair when we are looking for someone else to do that for us. So I think that that is something at the core in terms of building a relationship on alignment. And I've seen in friends of mine where they really rely on the other person as their social outlet, for their, this is what I'm doing, you know on a Friday night, or this is what I'm doing on a Wednesday or a Sunday. And they need their partner, as their person that provides them with that social outlet. And I, of course, like, in relationships, I think it's important that you spend time with that person and have a good time together. But I think it is so, so important that you have your time either on your own to do things or you have your friends that you do things with, it is completely unnecessary that in order for you to socialize that you have to travel as a pair all the time wherever you go, no matter what. And I think that it becomes a bit unhealthy, and the dynamic, I think, gets damaged, if that makes sense. The other thing, too, and again, like this wasn't always something that I was aware of, but again, with time and experience and relationships, that we really have to um, take responsibility for our own happiness. Now, I I of course understand that, when, being with someone that we love and we're excited about being with them, that brings a level of joy and happiness into our lives, and we want that and we crave that. But there has to be the ability to look at our own lives, at ourselves, and say, okay, but like, am I happy on my own, or am I relying on this other person to make me happy? And I think that that's also a very dangerous place to be, because, of course, like we enter into relationships and marriage hoping that this will last. But what happens if it doesn't? If it doesn't, are we going to fall apart because so much of our own self worth is wrapped up in that other person, that if that person were to go away, that we no longer feel good about ourselves, that now we are worth less? Now, of course, like if a marriage comes to an end or there's a breakup, we feel sadness. There is a trauma that we potentially can go through, and we mourn that relationship. But it's just, again, like there's a difference between that and then thinking that so much of ourselves is wrapped up into that other person, and our self-worth is completely, I mean, diminished, negligible without that person in our lives. And so I think that is also something that, in terms of building a strong relationship, we need to be happy on our own. I have really found, to like, during this period of my life where, since my last divorce, and quite honestly, in the last year, I really haven't been dating very much. And it has really given me an opportunity to understand the importance of self soothing and emotional regulation. And what I mean by that is, sure, like when we go through tough times and we really want to have someone there to hold our hand, to pick us up when we're down, and being able to, if we're in a relationship with someone, that person is there for us. But what happens if that person isn't? Are we able to self soothe and emotionally regulate? And I think that's really important, like being able to manage our own anxiety, being able to talk ourselves down off the ledge if we're feeling frustrated or scared, and not always having to rely on someone to do that for us. And I think that really helps to build our character when we're able to do that for ourselves. And that, of course, that doesn't mean that, like, we of course it's comforting to be able to pick up the phone and call a friend or a sibling or whatever, and of course to have a partner. But if we don't, to be able to manage that on our own and not feel completely lost and helpless, I think also makes us more ready to engage in a long term relationship. I think that there's a fine line between also, being a positive interdependence versus an unhealthy dependency. And I touched on that before, just being that like not being able to socialize without the other person there, and that person being your everything, and that you can't go out on a Friday night and enjoy yourself because your partner isn't there and you're worried about who they're talking to or what they're doing, and you're not able to have a good time without that person standing by your side. Also even being able to take a vacation without that person, or that person taking a vacation without you. We should want that, not only for ourselves but for our partners. On the opposite side, or the opposite end of the spectrum, there's also being too independent and too hyper independent, and not allowing someone to get too close to us. Maybe because we've been hurt and burned or whatever in previous relationships, and maybe being able to look at that and having the ability to allow someone to get close to us. And maybe that takes some time, and that's okay. There's no reason ever to rush into anything that we feel uncomfortable with, but I think it's important to be able to recognize that. I think it's also important to mention that wherever you are in your dating journey or love life or marriage, relationships, whatever it is, I think it's just of the utmost importance that we never lose sight of ourselves. It's very easy that when we get involved in a relationship and everything gets very enmeshed, that sometimes we lose parts of ourselves and absorb parts of the other person. Now, that's okay to an extent, but we never want to feel that we no longer recognize ourselves because we've really just absorbed the other person's persona, or whatever is important to them is what's important to us, but what we value is no longer anything that we need to focus on. So I think that there's obviously give and take, but we don't want to completely lose sight of who we are, what our goals are, and remembering that being involved in a relationship where the alignment makes sense, those things really fall into place naturally. But in a relationship where it's out of need, or in a relationship out of loneliness or lack of fulfillment, that's where we lose ourselves. And when you hear people say that they've been married for years and they no longer recognize themselves, we want to make sure that if we have friendships that are important to us, that we hold on to them. Family relationships, careers, passions, hobbies, those are all things that I really encourage people to hold on to, regardless of where you are in your relationship journey. And in conclusion, I want to thank all of my listeners today for tuning in. If any of this has resonated with you in any way, and you would like to send me a message or an opinion about something else, maybe that you don't agree with, or something that I missed that you'd like to have a conversation about, please feel free to DM me. You can reach me on Instagram and on TikTok at Curated by the Cougar, also on YouTube at Curated by the Cougar. The podcast is also available on Spotify as well as on Apple Podcasts. And I really would appreciate it if maybe something that was mentioned in today's episode that you think would really help or make sense to a family member or a friend, please share the episode with that person. It really, really does help the podcast to grow. And I am always forever grateful to those of you that do that and also send me messages. And lastly, I do want to mention that being in a relationship and keeping it going for the long haul is hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard and it takes work and dedication and lots of love. And I also really believe it's being curious about your partner. And what I mean by that is ask them the questions. Ask them not only about their day, but things that they think about or are interested in. Have those conversations. Always be curious about that person, regardless of if you've been together 3 weeks, 3 years, 30 years. I really do believe that that's how we keep the love alive. Until next time.